I'd like to first thank everyone for helping support this this monastery, this mandala, this sangha, this teacher. Thank you. And also ask you to continue to help us if you can. This evening's Dharma talk is anger as it is. So using the title of this particular teaching that's been going on for a little while on weeknights at 6 o'clock Eastern. Anger as it is. And so what I'm endeavoring to say there is that as soon as anger arises in your mind stream or mine or anyone else's, as soon as that arises, don't stop it. Don't explain it. Don't blame anyone for it, including yourself. Do nothing with it. Just receive the anger. If you're really receiving the anger, you won't even have the name anger. If you called it anger, then you've already started to move away from the anger, which is a very relative and productive. When I say productive, I'm just saying in motion form of ignorance. You're just stopping it with your ideas, or you're stopping it with your explanation. And you are getting yourself deeper into the circularity of samsara, which we are all dealing with. If you're listening to the teachings of the Buddha or a Buddhist teacher who is teaching out of that understanding of the Buddha, and this may make, I don't know if it'll make sense to you, but it may be helpful to you to see that you have to catch it. You have to catch it right at the gate. You have to catch it before it even starts to move. As soon as the immediacy of the anger is just like heat. And if you try to stop it, it will turn into something else, like what's causing it. You'll start to get mad at what is causing it, rather than saying anger is dependently arisen and is not generated by a person. If you think it is, circles. Or what's the other pronunciation for circles? Samsara. Round and around and around. So it has to be done with the awareness, and it's very challenging to have that come up, especially if you've been meditating and meditating and meditating, and you're seeing no results. In other words, the anger is still showing up, and your idea about this is to meditate so you can get rid of the anger. This is the very nature of spiritual materialism, using spiritual techniques, meditation, awareness, mantras, incantations, whatever it may be, prayer, to get rid of or do away with or subdue it. And if you're studying this particular way, then we do it with the awareness. You're actually just the same awareness that hears a bird make a sound or a song, or you hear a door slam down the hallway, maybe caused by the wind drawing through the window, creating a vacuum, slamming a door. Or maybe it was someone just slamming a door. Maybe they were angry. That's an outflow of anger, to slam a door. It tells everyone else in the building, you're mad, and you want to involve everybody in your expression that Trungpa Rinpoche used quite a bit, petty mind. Taking anything that arises up and making it somehow, personalizing it and making it her fault, their fault, or somebody happened. If they hadn't said this, done this, then I would not be angry. Yes, you would. Maybe not at that moment, but eventually something would come along and trigger the anger that you've never dealt with. When I say dealt with, I'm not talking about psychology or therapy or anything. And I'm not against that. If you want to go that direction, lots of people are out there working with people in that way. By all means, do it that way. But if you want to do it with your awareness, you can. You just have to do a lot of sitting meditation. Countless hours of sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind, so you can see the way the mind slowly creates something, and the way the mind or the consciousness slowly watches that something that was created disappear. Train your mind to see clearly. Seeing clearly is not necessarily thinking clearly, though very clear thinking can come out of that, but it's unlikely that the thinking process will lead you into more clear thinking. So as it is, as anger, as it is, just even before the the labeling of that one of the three poisons: aggression, passion, aggression, and ignorance. The three poisons, or those aspects, or those things that arise in consciousness that pollute or further contaminate or further are at war with other aspects of the consciousness, sometimes referred to as conflicting emotions about the nature of any damn thing. So if you're not clear about what that is here with this human that you are, you might have been around for 15 or 20 years or 70 or 80 years. It's hard to say how far you'll go. But that you have to be responsible for that. Not blame, it's not a blame thing, but the ability to respond. So whatever shows up, respond, and keep it very minimal, very radical, and very, very direct. And how do you do that? You practice doing that, practicing meditation, practicing shikantaza, the way I teach it. And I've practiced many other ways of meditating. This is the one that I basically teach. Not that I might not modify that for you if I interact with you quite a bit. Might do things completely differently. But that's a good place to start. Sit down, hold still, watch the way you continue to move this, move that, push that. Distract yourself from that. It's happening all day long. And the beginning of that awareness, it can be quite frustrating, because then we begin to see that we have no say-so. We cannot control the mind. You can control the body. You can pick something up and move it to someplace else. That sometimes gives us the feeling that we have some say-so here. Yes, you do some, but it's very limited. And it is always dependently arisen. But that dependent origination doesn't just mean atoms and molecules all getting together to form lots of different kinds of things. So the idea there is you aren't going to be able to control your anger or your aggression or your rage, but you can begin right now or today or 10 years ago, begin to see what this is. It's not why. If you go into why, you're going to go in circles. It's not that you might not find a relative reason of why they said this or did that, and then that triggers anger. Quite often, if it's really outrageous, it's like what's the old saying, the old metaphor for a mountain out of a molehill. It's just a little thing happened, and you, me, or some of us made a big deal out of something that really wasn't that really that much. It was just a simple situation. The person who maybe triggered that maybe has even apologized for it. We're still mad. Why? Because the anger continues to give the ego a way to survive, to keep feeling I'm the person who's mad. It reestablishes the illusion of a solid self. You don't have to get rid of illusions. You just have to see that they are unreal. They are unreal, unsubstantial, and whatever shows up is impermanent. It's going away. It might not go away on your time frame. So therefore, it could be very, very frustrating. It's still there. It's still there. I've been meditating. I meditate all the time. I'm still irritated with everything, and I'm upset and can't get any satisfaction from anything. Go back to the first noble truth of the Buddha. Life is suffering. Being alive, being a human being, means you will suffer. And though he didn't say part-time, he also didn't say part-time. I know you are tracking what I'm saying, even if to object to it. Sir.
Sort of going, can we see the anger if it's not being triggered? Going.
Yes, you can. It may not have a name of anger on it. You may be forced into giving it a name like depression. And I'm not blocking down and say that's what it's going to be, but consciousness always finds whatever form, finds its own form. I've been saying that for a while. And you cannot track down why it's finding that form, because it is so dependent origination, pratitya samutpada is so incredibly dense, varied, and you can't find a primary source for anything. It's just too dense. Go ahead.
Sort of bowing. It sounded like you're saying that before we label it, it might show up as depression or anger.
Could do anything. Emotion. Go ahead. You had something else?
Are we pushing it in that direction?
Could be. We want something. We want to know what is, why am I doing, what is this? Why am I feeling this way? So I'm not saying it would have to be that way. It could be some other dynamic happening that perhaps we don't even have a name for. We always try to come up for names for something, thinking that we need knowledge about that. The science is notorious for closing up its eye by naming and conceptualizing and concluding in order to do what? Control. And is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just what's happening, trying to control things. Should we do that? I don't know. Should we? Go ahead.
Sort of bowing. What is it to investigate without the intention to control what we're looking at?
Have the intention to see what it is, to see fundamentally what that is. If you get angry and you abandon that just by giving it the word anger, that's starting to turn away from it already. You've labeled it. There's no investigation goes on. You can't look at it with your consciousness because there's still a self who's objecting, agreeing, or shutting down on something, passion, aggression, and ignorance. That's why it takes so much sitting practice. It's not unlikely to happen. It's not even an occurrence. It's like the absence of an occurrence. It's the absence of looking away. It's the absence. Consciousness is always finding its own form. And the final form, if you want to use the word final, it finds is consciousness itself. It finds that it's nothing but consciousness. And it's to use a relative expression, is scattered everywhere. You can't see anything but consciousness everywhere. Then it's not a conclusion. It's very journey-like, and that journey goes on indefinitely. To use something that talks about time, really doesn't go anywhere.
Wonderbine, is there, when we see anger, what does that help us see about our ego? We have the emotion arise. Is there a chance or an opportunity to see our ego as well?
Somewhat. I think seeing the anger, that could happen. You might say there's even a technique that is used called that the Ramana Maharshi taught, called Atma Vichara, which is self-inquiry. Who's angry? Rather than say anything more about the anger. Here's the anger. I'm angry. Who's angry? And then you would something, well, I'm angry. Well, who am I? Who is that? So constantly going deeper into the identity. I don't teach that as a general teaching, but if it shows up with someone, then I might encourage that. Might have to just look at what arises for several years first before you go into that approach. That's how it looks over here.
Wonderbine, are there two different things, that emotion, anger, and ego?
They look separate, yes. They look separate. They appear that way. Everything appears separate. It gives us the illusion that we can somehow stop this and start that, or approve of this and disapprove of that. We do it on our mind stream, we do it on our life stream, we do it on our sangha, in our family, in our community, in our world. We're always picking and choosing. It's very difficult, especially when you get to the point where all you do is just feel bad. And you have no reason why, you don't know why. So you go to someone like you, a therapist, and then you might try to investigate that and see what, I don't know how that works for you, but you've been trained to look into that. Isn't that true? And so if there's a possibility of that person meditating, you may recommend that, but generally speaking, you would apply some kind of a technique. Is that true? To working with them or not?
Help them go into and look at just the anger,
Okay.
just be with the anger.
So you would tell him to be with it.
No, I would, in a session,
Come on.
have them look at the anger and tell
Okay.
them what they see, what they feel,
Okay.
what the texture
How's that
is.
working?
Seems to be helpful.
Okay. Then do that. I think it is helpful. But the fundamental misunderstanding or mistaken identity is that there is a separate person who could even feel that way. The feeling is, it does not have a feeler. There's no one who feels that way. This has to be seen, and unless that insight appears for you, there will always be something hidden around something you don't know, something you need to know about that, or something that you want to blame, or is to blame for how you feel. In the technique of therapy or psychology or even drugging someone, they're all relative. They buy into the reality of the relative dynamic. And of course, in some cases, it can be very successful. You can tell, I had a meditation student many years ago in Minneapolis who just would, if you gave him a chance, he would just rave at how Prozac saved his life. He was very happy with Prozac. So I wasn't particularly going to take that away from him or tell him he shouldn't do that. Or as I know he's still using Prozac. And should he? Perhaps he's using it. Seems to help him. Whether he's still meditating or not, I don't know. More?
Is there a place for us to look at what triggered the anger?
A little bit. But it's very easy to get into blaming. Somebody said or did this something, and I was feeling fine until that happened, and then I'm upset or I'm angry about that. So we get caught in that cycle. It's just called samsara. It's called suffering. We get trapped in it because of the uninspected or unexamined, or we are unaware that we are grasping at an aspect of consciousness that is unreal. There is no reality to this. There's a body here, there are bodies everywhere, but there's no conclusion happening here about anything unless you bring me that kind of mental qualities, and I'm all about, I'll just dance around the floor with you. You bring me what you're looking at, and I'll suffer with you. That doesn't mean it's the same thing. It also doesn't mean it's different. But basically what I'm here to help you with, if you give me permission, and that takes quite a bit because you might think you're giving me permission. I'm just waiting for you to do that. I'm waiting because I can't threaten you out of it. You better do as I say or you're going to go to hell or something like that. More?
Even bowing, what is anger let loose from the circular pattern, and that fixation and keeping?
Yeah. So the way I'm understanding the question is, if you see through that there's no solid self anymore that's angry. Is that what you're asking me? What happens to the anger then?
What is anger let loose from that
From
circular pattern?
That is created by the belief in the self? I want to make sure that you're asking the question that I'm about to answer. Is that it? You seem a little bit unsure. Should I just answer it anyway? It's just dependent origination. It's been completely, to speak about it relatively, it's been completely depersonalized. It's intense anger that will come up in your body mind, but you no longer grasp it as an object you've got to get rid of. You no longer grasp it as an object you have to explain or find out why it's happening. It just arises. It feels like crap. It could feel even worse when there's no self to act as a buffer. So because of the self that acts as a buffer, then you can blame somebody. Then, well, I wouldn't be suffering if it weren't for George, Harry, Mike, or Jim, or Mary. If it weren't for, we have the emotion and it feels very, very bad, and we just cannot help but attribute that why I'm feeling that way is what she said, they said, or they did or didn't do. And it's not that they didn't trigger that, but the emotion that is arising in your mind stream is yours. It's I mean, when I say yours, I don't mean your persona, your ego. I'm saying this consciousness, just like this finger is on my hand, not your hand. You can't point my finger. I can barely do it myself. All the rest of them get jealous. How about us? So the idea there is to see that there's no solid self in the skandhas, form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. There's no solid being there. And how do we do that? Look at the wall and watch what moves, so that we get so, you could even say, conditioned to just watching what's moving. When anger does come up, there's more of a chance, no guarantee, more of a chance that you'll just watch the anger rise and start to fall away, because it's looking for someone who's angry to accept that anger, so then it can generate outflows of finger pointing or blaming or writing cruel TikToks. More?
And bowing, is anger liberated at the same time as we are from
Yes.
clinging?
Everything is liberated. But that doesn't mean that anger won't still arise, because your life, you can't meditate away the shape of your nose or the particular karma you came into this life with. You're still going to, that's still going to show up, but you no longer have to fix it, do anything about it. And it's unlikely you would even talk about anger anymore, even though you might experience it every few days or more. But you would see it as, it's like a rainstorm. It's like a hailstorm. It's like all these smoke clouds. We're going to blame for all the smoke coming down from Quebec. Canadians? Blame the trees? Blame the fire. Damn fire. Sanho, you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Just checking. More?
Yeah, bowing, you said if we've labeled it anger, we've missed what it is. You also gave instruction for what not to do with anger.
Like what?
Well, I'd have to watch the YouTube video.
You mean you can't remember what you're commenting on?
Don't do things with it.
So what I'm saying is receive whatever shows up without comment. And that's what we're doing and practicing doing in Shikantaza. Sit down, hold still, receive what shows up without objecting, agreeing, or looking away. 3 poisons. Without objecting would be the anger part of it. Just that shows up and we get upset, we get mad. So I would say it this way: just get mad. But that doesn't mean you'd necessarily get to go around and punish people or make fun of people or break out people's windows or shoot them. But the feeling, the emotion, just don't interrupt that. Receive that. Receive it on behalf of all people who have no mind training at all and have no what we could call it an option, no option, but to just act out of it. That's the only way they can get rid of it. Some people who are really, really angry and upset and torture other people because they're a dictator of a whole country. They torture thousands and thousands of people. And that way they get rid of their own fear. They don't even know they're afraid. Pick out any one of these dictators, and they don't realize how afraid they are. So therefore they torture others, make others prisoners. More?
Knowing whatever anger is, I don't know what it is, but whatever anger is it getting in the way of anything?
Oh, relatively, sure. It gets in the way of your good mood. You're having a really good mood, and some dick came along and spit in your rose bush, and you saw him out the window. I mean, someone did something, and that can trigger some anger, dissatisfaction. It's not that wouldn't show up in any situation, but it would be very relative. It would not have any legs. It would not continue to go. If you're still mad today about something that happened 3 weeks ago, let alone 3 days ago, this is, you want to know the technical word for that? Insanity. It's insanity to continue to do that. When I say insanity, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, so But I guess I could use that word, couldn't I? Kind of. Anybody want to disagree? I mean, it's not particularly sane. How's that? That's better. I mean, why would you be really angry about something that triggered you a long time ago, or weeks ago, 3 days ago, 3 months, 3 years? Just what they call holding a grudge. Further questions? How about on Zoom? Yuhong.
Yuhong Baoyin, I have a follow-up question about Biyun's asking. You said 3 days holding the grudge. How can we not? If someone really hurt us that bad?
Good point.
Baoyin.
Good point. You probably would. I was just using that as an example. So you probably would. You'd still be upset about something that occurred like that. But you could actually train your mind so that when those kinds of things arise, there's less and less. There's less and less of fixating and using that to fuel your self-centeredness, your ego. So some of it might happen. Sometimes I say, and I can say it right now, and I'm happy to answer questions or respond to them. At least I don't know if I can answer them. But whatever shows up, whatever comes, negative, positive, negative, or neutral, just be the emotion, rather than try to. Just another way of talking about it, and it's not something you can do unless you have a lot of awareness training. You can't just think this. You can't figure this out. But just be the emotion, having willingness to let it flood you, allow it. Don't jump away from the emotion into who did it, what it means. Be responsible, not to blame, but the ability to respond. Responsible. You're not responsibility, as I understand it, is not blame. Nothing's to blame for anything. If you think it is, we're at war, either at the kitchen table or across the enemy lines of some sort. You don't have to do that. Most of the people that are out there that are creating chaos for others are using that to hide out from their own fear. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of not having any power.
Thank you, Baoyin. I have one more question. When you say intention, when we set up an intention, how can we not caught up by the intention of setting standards and expectations? Baoyin.
Might be some of that happening. So the important thing, the way I talk to most people generally, is have the intention to see what is true yourself, not just believe in Buddhism or believe in this guy, but have the intention using. There's no religious activity, particularly in terms of any kind of a tradition or anything that is owned by that owns Shikantaza. Sit down, hold still, and watch. You can do that and be a Roman Catholic. You could be practicing Judaism. You could have no particular religious orientation. Just watch what is happening in the mind. That way, when you get up and start moving around again, you have a more clear idea of how the mind is working and how you may be creating your own chaos, adding to your own suffering and those that you love, or those that you are maybe close to you in the form of an enemy, which is very similar. Friends and enemies.
Yuhong Baoyin, I don't think I was very clear about my asking. I think if I can ask again.
Please do.
You often say don't maintain. How can we do what you said? Don't maintain.
Return.
At the same time, have the intention.
Return to the intention. Return to the intention. If you're understanding what I'm pointing at, I'm saying just every day return to it. Eventually, you just return. Eventually, you actually don't leave because there's nowhere to go. You don't arrive. You don't leave. The modifications. A few teachers have been able to point this out. His Holiness the 16th Karmapa Rangjung Rigpi Dorje in 1981 said, nothing happens. That's a mind stopper right there. Because you'll say, Because it does, it most certainly does. All kinds of things are happening. What did he mean by that? He was endeavoring, I didn't chat with him about it, but he was endeavoring, as far as I can see, I did meet him, but we were not buds. But as my understanding of what he was pointing at was everything you think is occurring is an illusion. And in Buddha nature, nothing occurs. If something occurs, it's relative truth. Nothing shows up, therefore nothing can go away. See it yourself. Don't believe what I'm saying. You don't have to believe this at all. I would be insulted if you just believed me and went away and said, well, Sokuzan says this, and Sokuzan says that, Sokuzan says. Don't do that. I'm not saying you can't say Sokuzan said, don't do that. Because I just did, didn't I?
No, that's how I receive it.
Good.
Fine.
So it's up to you. I'm saying this is how it looks over here. This old man has been looking at this for a long time. And how this looks is nothing is separate from anything else. And until you realize that, you'll continue to go to war with aspects of your own mind that are showing up as other. There isn't anyone else out here. It's an astonishing illusion. It has us by the throat. And all you have to do is see that. This is what the Buddha was referring to. Life is suffering. He didn't say part-time. It's suffering. And that's not nihilism. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. But if you think it's nihilism, I'm not going to debate you. I don't debate anybody. Oh, yeah, there's that one debate I had, which I lost. That's when I stopped debating everyone. Yes. Choo-choo.
Choo-choo bowing. Earlier, when you were talking about anger, you said you have to catch it right at the gate.
Yes.
What do you mean by catch it?
See it. You have to see the anger when it's just starting to, it's like a little bit of smoke is coming out. It isn't a full blaze yet. And you practice doing that by watching what arises in the mind stream as you're practicing awareness practice, shikantaza, or just a very simple radical awareness where you're just watching the movement of the mind. And if you hold the body very still, what continues to move, well, could be the body. You got your digestive tract and you've got your heartbeat. So there's a lot of things that are going on there that we have no say-so about. Most of the things in the body we have no say-so about. I mean, I can do this and I can do that, but I can't grab onto this and grab onto this and then grow a third arm to hang onto that camera. We have a little bit of control, but over 1 million years, yeah, you probably could. Just out of the need to do that. It's called what? Evolution. Arms come out of all kinds of things. More?
Choo-choo bowing. If we don't see it right out of the gate, what are we seeing when we look at the situation?
Probably a few laminations or ideas, judgments about it, but just continue to look at that. Whatever shows up. When you sit down and hold still, practice shikantaza, which you've been doing for 6 or 7 years now that I know of. Sit down, hold still, and watch the movement of the mind. Don't grasp, don't reject, and don't shut down. But if you do any of those things, then just observe yourself doing it. It is an awareness practice, not a conclusion or an accomplishment practice. Anytime there's any accomplishment going on, that part of the mind called the seventh consciousness in the Yogacara tradition is trying to get a credit or get it needs to stay alive. It needs to stay alive. Somebody's winning, somebody's not about to lose, or somebody's losing, or somebody's totally ashamed because they've made such a mess of their life. Shame also fuels the illusion of a separate self. More?
Bowing. Is seeing the lamination any different than seeing the initial anger?
Yes, if you're seeing the anger before the name anger, which is what you will come to, it's just it's very process-like, but it just takes a lot of intention. Almost with me, I've always thought about it as just being stubborn. I'm not going to give up on this until I'm dead. I'm going to do this. I'm going to understand this. The inspiration I got from my teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche. I'm going to see this. I made a commitment to do it. I'm going to see it if it kills me. And it almost did. But it didn't. I'm still here. And I'm looking at it. It's not an accomplishment. You can see what I'm seeing, but it won't be what I'm seeing. It'll be what you see. You'll be completely alone. Sometimes it's called, until you realize that there is no self, it feels lonely to see something you can't even talk to anyone about. Go ahead.
When you say see what this is,
Yes.
are you saying we can't see what this is in the lamination? We have to see it in the initial situation?
No, you will, the initial situation is, you haven't gotten to that yet, but that's what I'm endeavoring to do, is say that's what we're trying to see. So trying to see that, I'm saying what you're looking for, you're looking at. It's just behind a couple of curtains and stage right and down the hallway and off to the side and through the green door. It's just complicated, and it's your particular sojourn there. It's not some kind of a thing where you have to do this the same way all the time. That's taught in different places. Some teachers teach it that way. They teach the same practice to everyone. Everybody's doing White Tara, or everybody's doing Chakra Sambar or something. I know I have practiced, not all of them, but a few of them. I'm not saying they're wrong, but if you're going to do those practices, you need a teacher, because they're complicated. With Shikantaza, probably going to need a teacher there too, but not immediately. You can practice that for 10, 15 years. More? Thank you for the question. Yes.
Eric from Traverse City asks, when we are responsible for the painful feelings that arise in our consciousness, can that help us to not send that pain back into the world?
I feel that it can. It's your pain. It's your, when I say yours, I don't mean the ego mind, the self-centered mind that wants to get rid of it or wants to blame somebody for it. It's just yours, and it won't tip over into self-pity or shame or self analysis. It won't tip away from just seeing that. It won't go into some story about it if you're really seeing it. If you're really seeing it with consciousness only, there's no self there. There's no identity there. That has been seen through. You see that the identity that you thought was giving you all the trouble, actually it was, but it was unreal. Might as well be a Stephen King movie or a Alfred Hitchcock mystery. Remember that guy, Alfred Hitchcock? Anybody? Sam Spade. Remember him? He's a detective from the 40s and 50s. Mark Hirsch knows what I'm talking about. Further questions?
Maltese.
What?
The Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon. Yes. So that was the name of the book, right?
Yeah, Sam Spade was in.
Now, see, I get help from all quarters and from all other things. Go ahead.
What about, so I was just going to ask Eric's question in kind of reverse. So when we have outflows,
Yes.
or when anger shows up and we observe it, we do not bring pain into the world, but when we have outflows, we do.
You could say it that way, but I think it's much more nuanced and complicated than that. You can't really use that as a formula to kind of analyze how you're doing it. It has to be done through the intention. Somebody else might see that, might write a book about you or something, or you might write a book about the situation at some point, but unlikely. It's always about awareness. It's not about stopping outflows. So you still have to see that this is happening. And then instead of just receiving that, we're trying to get rid of that by blaming, get rid of that, which is passion, or get rid of that by attacking whatever we thought caused that, or getting upset with. I mean, you can just be mad at yourself and just slam your fist down on the table because you're so mad because you missed this or missed that, or having this emotion or that emotion. More.
What about, I'm trying to understand the difference in that observing the anger and expressing the anger in how we're affecting the world.
So I wouldn't go too far into how we are affecting the world, because the way I'm teaching is not necessarily to stop being a bad person that's having ill effects on the world, but just be responsible. Just start with where you're at. Start right here with this mind, this body, sitting in front of this wall, and watching what arises and falls away. And then watch as you get up and move into environment with others, especially with Sangha, because these other people are training their minds too. They might not be doing the wonderful job that you're doing. They might be miserable and blaming you for every bad thing that happens to them. But they're suffering too. The people that are suffering the most might not know it, but the people that they're taking it out on are going to know, because they're receiving the suffering that person's getting rid of by going after you. Our whole prison system is based on threats, and it's just tiring. Is anyone helping anybody? Not in the work that I've done in prisons. Doesn't look like any. Maybe an individual chaplain here and there might be really concerned about the people that have been locked up there, but most of the time it's just pretty unbearable suffering. What
happens when we receive anger?
Your mind stream?
Receive our own anger or the anger of others?
Well, if you just receive it and don't do anything with it, then it goes away. Maybe not in your time frame, but it only can stay there. It can persist if you push it. It only can persist if you pull on it or blame something or show or explain or elaborate or anything other than just the raw anger that's coming this way or coming out of you or coming out of something else, or distracting yourself so you haven't really, it's knocked at your door, but you've bolted the door, ignoring, distraction. It's still there. It came there because of dependent origination, if you needed a cause. Because there are no separate things anywhere. Everything is arising in your mind stream or your life stream is dependent on, even to say countless is just you can't even express it. It's so extremely complicated and splits up into separations like fingers on a hand. People in a room, it looks very separate, but the people in the room are very much like fingers on a hand. You can't take one person out, the whole thing changes. If I'm giving a Dharma talk and I start out by, I might have a talk title, but I look around and the Dharma talk that I give comes from looking at you. Not that I'm reading minds. We don't even have minds. If we did, it'd be bad, a bunch of bad grammar. Further questions?
Navid bowing.
I'll get back to you, Navid, as soon as I respond to Andrea's question.
Andrea bowing. What makes anger in the moment that you experience anger? What makes it like invisible?
Say, I'm following your question, but a little bit more. You mean it's got a hold of you before you know what happened and suddenly you're enraged?
Yeah, like
Okay.
if you're, the way we're talking about it is in these kinds of like stages and pieces that are very like peaceful and spaced out. But my experience of anger is dense and immediate, and so it's quickly overwhelming.
Got you. I got it. So just your statement is dense. It tells me that you're already aware. It's not a fundamental, all-pervasive awareness of what it is, but it tells me that you feel that your description that it's, as soon as I'm aware that I'm angry, it's dense. It's like there was a flood coming and you didn't see the flood. And the next thing you know, you're 16 feet under or 50 fathoms or whatever. You're in the flood. That kind of density?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your question?
What does that? What is there ego that makes it invisible, or why does it? It's one of the few emotions that even overwhelming grief, even sadness, I can
Yes.
feel and notice.
Sure.
In a kind of presence of mind, I guess.
Yes.
Anger is one of the
Okay.
emotions in that kind.
Yes, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good description. You have a lot of awareness around that. But when you see that density, what do? Do you blame, or do you go into who caused it, or do you go away from it?
I only see the density in retrospect.
What do you see at the time you're angry? Wait, stop. You're listening? Now are you listening to me?
Yep.
Now your body language did this. As soon as you looked into your eyes went up And you went, yeah. Now be very aware of the facial expression when you're talking about this. Be very, don't change it. I'm not saying stop doing that. I'm saying be very aware. You are actually telling me. Yeah, that's a good one. You're actually telling me how your body-mind complex is connected with this. This is why sitting practices of meditation is so powerful, because you're taking the very emotive or the very outflow of consciousness into a human form. This is an outflow you're living in, by the way. Your mom and your dad had a say in it, but so you're actually showing me a little bit the connection you have with that. And I would say I can respond to a further question about it, but I think the best thing I can say to work with that is a lot of sitting meditation. And when the next time you do get enraged, give it a couple minutes. You know, like the cartoons used to, Mickey Mouse would be really mad, but then he would count to 10 before he, hit Donald Duck over the head. So you could, that kind of a thing, just wait a little bit. I see nobody remembers that cartoon, but that's okay. So, but give it a little bit of time of watching that density, that observing the density without covering it up, observing the density without this. The facial, that actually gets you away from looking at it. It's not that you need to not move and don't make that facial expression. It's just awareness. That facial expression will more than likely recede or go away when you get closer to what the true nature of this anger is. And anger is dependently arisen. So it may arise. My anger comes and goes all the time. Maybe not every day, but it can't find a person. That doesn't mean that I won't get angry and slam the tabletop. I might. But there's no agenda behind any of it. It's you're kind of sunk with in terms of the density. But you realize that you're completely liberated in that. There's no prison anywhere other than our thoughts that wrap around and create these little bars and constructs of belief, disbelief, and ignorance. More? Okay, we'll get back. I'll get back to you then. Naveed.
Navid bowing. How can we get angry and not hurt others at the same time with the anger? Bowing.
I can't come up with, and I don't know if anyone can, but come up with some kind of protocol where that won't occur. We're engaged with others. Just slow everything down as best you can. Try to spend as much time as you can sitting down, facing the wall, and get to know yourself. Get to know that part of the mind that is full of this anger. Because anger, that if you get upset because you forgot this or something was misplaced, and it's in line with whatever happened, there might be some irritation, but there's unlikely to be outrage. But if little occurrences, or someone misplaces something, or you misunderstood, or someone doesn't live up to the agreement they made with you yesterday because they forgot, or which can look like they don't care about you, and you can put it all down the line where they're just a horrible person, and really all they did was they were absent-minded. And so I don't know how you can do that other than first deal with anger here. Because if this is enraged and you're covering it up because you don't want to be a person who's enraged, ego. And so some people are extremely talented at covering up their rage. But when the rage comes out, then it's full of fire and dragon's breath. So just do the best you can with it. I would say just continue to practice and reflect on that yourself. And you could study. There's different works out there on the 3 poisons, especially on anger, that might be more helpful than what I'm being here. Further, Naveed?
No, thank you. Bowing.
Yes, sir. Further question?
Kayun bowing.
Kayun.
if we catch anger at the gate, is that mirror-like wisdom? Bowing.
No, catching anger at the gate is not mirror-like wisdom. It is still a path. Mirror-like wisdom is more of a fruition, where you can't see anything, but because that's why it's called mirror-like. Everywhere you look, you see yourself. You don't see your physical form, your body. You see what is no longer the identity of who you are, is no longer holds forth, other than it's an illusion. You still have an illusory ego, which is quite comical at times, and actually can be sad, a little heartbreaking also. It doesn't have a solid, it's not a solid one-act play. It's just that aspect of the mind that tends to suffer. And you're not going to get rid of your karma. You're not going to suddenly be enlightened and be no longer at the mercy of causes and conditions. So mirror-like wisdom, I would say, it would be more fruitional, a way of talking about the wisdom that doesn't see anything but wisdom. So it's mirror-like wisdom, and it's mirror-like. So everywhere there may be a human form here, there may be just consciousness only. This form may have already died. Life and death is something we make a big deal out of, but is not a big deal. You can't have life without death. It's just another polarity.
Kayan Bowing,
Yes, sir.
is there something about anger in particular that lends itself to mirror-like wisdom? Bowing.
I think the intensity of the otherness, and quite often the anger is it could be other, the otherness could be about mad at myself, that could happen, but also mad at the other, just really angry out there. And by looking at that without adding to it, without justifying it, without explaining it, without blaming anyone, it becomes like a mirror. There's also, it can show up as a mirror. It can also show up as a solid ice. There's lots of metaphors for that situation. More?
Kayan Bowing, slightly different, but as you were talking this evening, I was reminded of, I think it's a myth of freedom. Trungpa Rinpoche says something like, anger without hatred is the energy of compassion.
Yes.
What does that mean, Bowing?
It just means that you're still a human being. You still have all of your senses, and you still get pissed off, and you get happy, and but without hatred, it just means that you love everyone. That doesn't mean that they might think that you should be treating them a hell of a lot different. If you really loved them, you wouldn't act this way or that. That's their evaluation of what you're doing. But it's just love. It's not the love of attachment. It's more like the love of appreciation. You appreciate human beings coming into this realm, and the possibility, the amazing possibility that someone could awaken to their true nature rather than go right back in the rotation lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, looking for happiness when happiness is right in front of you. Not the relative kind, the ultimate kind, which is what the Buddha was pointing at. There's that possibility. You can actually see this yourself. You don't believe me, and I'm here to point at something. And that's all I'm really doing. I'm pretty simple-minded, very simple-minded. I'm pointing at it because I'm looking at it, but I can see that which is looking back at me you do not realize who you are. You would not be in this room necessarily, or you maybe would be, I don't know, but chances are this would not be interesting material to you. More? Kayan?
Kayan Bowing, when we can't quite appreciate the other that seems to be causing our anger, can we appreciate the anger, Bowing?
Certainly can. It's just energy, but it doesn't belong to anyone. Compassion, there's no compassionator. The compassion, truly understood, is not an emotion. It's not a feeling that comes and goes. Compassion never goes anywhere, and it's not separate from wisdom. It just is a different way that wisdom shows up as more of an expression. You could even say that compassion is an outflow of wisdom or an inflow. Chisho? You have a question?
Shivang. So if a bodhisattva gets angry and thumps the table, and somebody who has not trained the mind does the same thing, the effect on people seeing it or receiving it is probably the same. They are hurt or they are like you said, that is their problem. What is the difference then between a bodhisattva thumping the table and causing suffering to others versus a normal human being? Bhavan?
So there's no difference between those. You are imputing the difference. The bodhisattva, he, she, or they know they're not separate from anything. They're no longer concerned about what anybody thinks about what they're doing. No longer any judgments about what they're doing. Not concerned about it. This doesn't mean they ignore it. They see it and they include that. So to come up with a differentiation like that, just I can't explain that in such a way that it will satisfy your question around how those are different. They are different in the way you already understand it, but they're the same in the way you don't understand it. So look deeply, look into the polarity, so that you'll see what do you say? You see the entire picture. You see wisdom, Buddhas and sentient beings. This is a teaching. I didn't make this up. Buddhas and sentient beings, not separate. The mean bodhisattva and the really mean non-bodhisattva, not different, not separate, not separate, not separate. Separated by our mind. Our mind separates. Aren't you reading 60 verses? No, not yet. You're reading it? Huh? I'm sorry?
The Yukti Shastika.
Isn't that the same thing?
Oh, that's a 60 or 70.
Is Eric being straight with me, Chisho?
No.
Okay, good. Yukti Shastika, that is 60 verses.
60. That's what I think too. But
okay, are we going to have a scholarly discussion here? Okay, good. I'm just playing. I don't know anything about that. There's the text right. He's got it right in front of him. No wonder he's giving me such a hard time. Are you reading? Are you a speed reader? I see you're going. Brrr. Yeah. Thank you for the referral, both of you, on that. I'm enjoying it.
No, I was not speed reading. I was just looking at the last verse, and that was 60.
Oh, the last one is the 60th verse. Yes. Yukti is Yukti 60. Yukti Sadhika.
Shastika.
Shastika.
Yukti Shastika. Shastika means 60. Yukti means reason.
Oh, Yukti means reason.
Yeah. Shastika. Shashti means 60.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I'm going to let that one lay because I no longer have anything to comment. I'm going to go to somebody who's real easy to respond to Jishin's question. So go ahead, Jishin.
Jishin bowing. What suffers when there is no one? Bowing.
That's a good question. No, and why wouldn't we ask that? Because, but just suffering suffers. It has its own dynamic. The Tibetans would say self. It's just self-existing. It just has its own. It's part of the illusion. A way of talking about the illusion. It says it's just self-existing. What's the Tibetan for that? Huh? What?
It's not wrong, John.
Is it wrong, John? Anybody else want to concur? How about the Sanskrit for that? Or maybe the Japanese? No, it's just a way. It is not. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to say, how can we go into that and say what that is without just making it totally incomprehensible? It just shows up. I can't remember anything from one second to the next. I don't need to. Nor do you. Should we go the other direction or what? Huh?
Did you have another question?
Yohung, did you have another question?
Yihong Bowing, yes, if you have time.
You can make time.
For the energy, you mentioned energy. Actually, my question is regarding energy aspect. What's the difference between pleasure and anger? Bowing.
I think energy-wise, it can be very similar. It's just energy, but it's taking a direction this way or a direction that way. I think it can be very personal. When I say very personal, that your interpretation of what is pleasurable for you, or what is the emotions or the energy that arises around anger, it just seems that the energy around anger is like the not always, but like of the three poisons, it's aggression, whereas the energy around pleasure is more passion. But not always. They could be mixed together, and along with throw in some ignorance also, or some what the flat word would be stupidity, just not seeing what is right in front of you and thinking it's this or that or that or that, and then going to war with something that is not even a problem until you made it one. Not just you, but me. That's how I know about it.
Yihong Bowing, who makes the preference then? Bowing.
Consciousness does, dependent origination does, under the guise of somebody who wants something. So that's also dependently arisen. That's why it's so difficult to see it, because the very dependent origination also is the way an imaginary self functions. Just like a movie is also dependently arisen, even though it's unreal. It's someone creates an illusion.
Yihong Bowing. Sorry, one more question. When we are not aware of our outflow of anger, how can we remember we still have the soft heart? Bowing.
I think just remind yourself, have some way of doing that. You can do that with the vows. You can do it with, you can pick a verse out of a text, possibly something I said, but it could be something more traditional, like a Shanti Deva. You could read something out of there that resonates with you. So do you have anything that shows up in your memory as far as you've been reading Shanti Deva? Nothing at all? How far are you into it? On the 5th chapter? Oh, well, you must have run into something there that was supportive of you. It wouldn't have made it past the 3rd, right? You can't remember what it is, though. So you would have to actually commit that to memory. Okay, there's your answer. Find something that you really like, and then do what Juzan has not done. Commit it to memory. Memorize it. Write it down, or at least read it. If you don't want to memorize it, just read that and reflect on what that means, and read it in 3 different speeds. One, very fast. One, just kind of a medium, and then read it very, very slow, where you don't even hardly get to the next word. You get to the next word and you forgot what the last word was. This is how you study this material. I've not said it before. Well, I'm saying it now. Study very slowly, but also study very fast. Study kind of a traditional way. But what should you do? Study it. Studying is very important. Understanding gets too much press, because the ego mind will try to understand that and try to get to a kind of understanding, and it will settle for that. Well, I have read that. Have you ever run into someone who's read Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism? Oh yeah, I read that. How was it? Wow, I thought it was a great book. I said, and you would say, well, what was the preface about? I can't remember. And yes, I do have the preface memorized, but I forgot it.
Thank you so much, Bowing.
I don't have anything memorized. So I guess we could retire to the 8th here.
Wulong Bowing.
Wulong.
Hi. What you say, be a good host to suffering or anger.
Yes.
What is hosting if there is no self?
It's just an attitude, the intention. So, and it's aligned with the ego mind. The ego wants to be enlightened also. It's just that as we head in that direction, it starts to come apart. It starts to dismantle itself by the very nature of the path. And it's not comfortable. And we tend to want to blame somebody else for how we're feeling, even though what is happening is we're deconstructing ourselves through the sitting practice of meditation, through returning to the 3 jewels, and all of that. So it's just consciousness. Consciousness is very delighted to find its own form, and the path to that can be pretty treacherous from the point of view of ego. More?
Can the body be the host?
Sure, the body and mind are not two separate things. They just are intensely separated. That's part of the illusion. It looks like the mind is over somewhere here or here in my shoulder or something, and the body's doing its thing. And just because the mind can be on a vacation in Trinidad at the same time you're driving to Best Buy, or driving to the car wash, you're thinking about being in Trinidad and what that's going to be like in 3 weeks when you get there. But mind is amazingly able to just go every direction. This is why when the body dies, when you go back into the elements, earth, fire, water, air, when you go back into the body, goes back into that, mostly into water, of course. Consciousness it keeps right on doing what it's been doing all along, fighting with things, agreeing with things, obstructing things. You'll create a body. Will you create one? They sometimes call the astral body. So there's traditions that talk about this a lot. Don't believe it. You find out. I'm not promoting anything other than find out who you are. If I'm promoting anything, do that. Don't live another day without returning to looking at your mind. If you want to do shamatha vipassana or shine and lakdong or some other tantric practices, go ahead. But find a way to do this. Find a teacher if you don't have one. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Jiezan, the prior at SokukoJi Buddhist Monastery. Sokuzan offers these talks without expecting anything in return. If you value these talks and would like them to continue, please visit our donate page at www.sokukoji.org. Thank you.